Once all the slinkies are in the ground and connect up to the manifold, next job is to fill them with fresh water, get all the air out of them, and then add antifreeze to the system. What we need to do is to set up our purging equipment, dustbin, purge pump, up onto the manifold. So what we suck out of the dustbin, into one of the purge ports, out of the other purge port, back to the dustbin. It's a good idea on the suction pipe to connect it up with an angle cut on the end of the suction pipe. It stops that sucking to the bottom of the bucket when you're running. Once we've got it all set up, we need to prime the pump, take the plug out the top, fill it up with fresh water. Once we're all connected up and we're all watertight, we open the two purge valves, open up the first valve going towards the heat pump, and then we can just purge out the air from the heat pump. We'll have to come back to that at the very end, because any air coming out of the slinkies will tend to rise into that pipe, so we'll do that again at the end. When you first turn the pump on, be very careful with this pipe. It can fly around a little bit, so make sure you've either got your hand on it or it's a nice rigid pipe. So the next thing to do is we can shut the valve off to the heat pump itself, open up the two valves to number 1 slinky, and we start purging again. Again, be careful of this pipe. What you'll also have to do now is start adding water to the dustbin. It's a good idea, if you can, to add water which has already stood for a while. It gets a lot of the dissolved air out of the water. As soon as we get to solid water coming back out of the return pipe, we don't need to add any more water, or very little water. Now all we have to do is let it run till we get no air bubbles coming back out of the return pipe. It'll normally take about 3 minutes to do a full circulation of a 50-metre slinky. So we leave it to run for about 3 minutes. If there's no air comes out, we can almost think that's purged. I'd let it run for about another 15. It's very, very important to get all the air out before we add antifreeze. Once we've purged the first slinky and got all the air out, we then go on to the second slinky and the third slinky and the fourth, and as many as we've got, all in the same procedure. Once we've done all the slinkies, we then go back and shut the slinkies off and go back and purge the heat pump again. As I said earlier, some of the air will have risen back into that pipe. Again, be very careful with that pipe. We don't need to run this for very long. It's usually a relatively short loop, certainly in this instance it is. The longer the loop, the bigger the pipe, the longer you'll have to purge it for. Once we've got the whole system purged of air, we then need to think about adding the antifreeze. We don't want to add the antifreeze before we're absolutely guaranteed we've got all the air out. To add the antifreeze, we need to drop the level in the dustbin. We only want about 200 ml, 150 ml, 200 ml of water in there. So the easiest way of doing that is we've got some empty drums here, is we can just pump it out. And the easiest way to pump it out is straight through the heat pump. Make sure all your slinkies are off, and we'll just drop the level in the bin. Very important now not to expose the suction pipe when we're doing this, otherwise we've got to start purging again. Now we've only got a little bit of water in the dustbin, we can add our antifreeze in there. When you tip the antifreeze in, try and tip it in without it sloshing in, so it goes in nice and gently. You've just purged all the air out of the system, and what you don't want to do is now incorporate a lot more air into the system. Right, now we've got 25 litres of antifreeze in there, plus a little bit of water. It's quite advantageous to put a concentrated solution into the heat pump heat exchanger. Saves potentially saves problems later on. So we want to open that valve, both the purge valves on. Again, be careful of that pipe. And turn the pump on. It'll come out clear and very quickly it'll turn blue. As soon as it turns blue, you can stop on that part of the system. We can shut the valve off now to the heat pump and open the valve to the number 1 slinky, the first slinky. What we need to do now is pump the liquid out of the dustbin into that number 1 slinky. And we need to drop the level in the bin again so we're ready to put the antifreeze in for number 2. Unfortunately, we've got a little bit of antifreeze in this pipe, so we need to run it for a couple of seconds just to clean this pipe out, and then we can take out 25 litres of liquid. Again, just till that runs clear. So now turn the pump on again and pump out 25 litres of liquid. What we're doing now is pumping concentrate antifreeze into the first slinky, and what we're getting out of here is just fresh water. Now we need to reintroduce the water back into the bin, because obviously we don't want to expose the suction pipe. And this is the clever bit. We want to pump it now to pump as much of the glycol into the system as we can and to end up with almost pure water in the bottom of the dustbin. The way to do that is you pump it and you stop just before the antifreeze comes back down here. Bit tricky on the first one. Don't really know how long it takes, but what you can do is time the first one, and then you know on the second one or the third one or your last one how long you have to pump for till you get most of it in there. So now we're just pumping it through, and we want to stop just before this pipe turns blue. Right, now we've got all the antifreeze in. If you had a 2 or 3 slinky system, you'd then go on and do the same thing over all of them. What we can do now is pressurise the system up with the purge pump. Should make about 4 bar with one of these pumps. So what we can do, if we turn off the return pipe, turn our other valves on, this is where you need to make sure that this pipework is very robust. If not, it'll pop off. Turn the pump on, pressure comes up, turn the valve off, and turn the pump off. It's now pressurised.